when I'm showing. Perfect. Hello there, and welcome to another Canon on the Couch. Tonight we've got double the price of admission. We've got two very experienced Australian photographers that we're going to share tonight, and we're going to talk about something really special as well coming up, which is just open today, which is awesome, which we'll start to get into. But first, let me introduce some amazing guests here. We've got Finkel, and we've got Darren Jew. Welcome, boys.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, really appreciate you both spending some time coming in, so that's great. Yeah. Darren, firstly, I just want to talk to you about your experience in photography. For those who don't know, you've been shooting now for over 40 years. We had that chat before.
Yeah.
And you're a Canon master.
That's right.
So you're in a pretty exclusive club. Do you want to tell us about your journey in photography just really briefly?
Been photographing all my career. I went straight from high school into art college, Queensland College of Art, and got pretty much straight into the industry a few months after finishing college.
Yep.
And been working at it ever since. Did some commercial work first and dark rooms and processing labs and things, and then worked for a commercial photographer for a couple of years, an archaeologist for a while as a darkroom assistant for him, and then about 8 years with the Queensland National Park Service as their photographer, and then I've been freelancing since the mid-90s, working for myself.
Amazing. And I do note, obviously, your career changed a little bit in what you like to take photos of, and now you're quite well known as a nature and wildlife photographer. How did that venture become a natural transition for you?
I guess it was always what I wanted to do, and I just had to work out how to make a living out of it. Yep. It was a pretty tricky one back then. Luckily I got that job at National Parks as their photographer, and I guess that set me on my path. And then once I started freelancing, it was just the direction that I pushed myself, doing editorial work and commissions and ecotourism stuff, and all that time sort of trying to tell really good nature stories with my camera.
Yeah, beautiful. And we've had you on the couch before as well, which is great that we've had you in again. So we really appreciate the time that you've given us. You do support us on a lot of judging as well, which we're going to delve into, Explorers competition as well, which is really nice of you to give your time to. But I just wanted to delve a little bit deeper into your relationship with Canon as a brand. How did that sort of come about? Obviously, you've been using their gear for quite some time as well.
Yes, I got an F1 and T90 back in, would have been the mid-80s, I guess. Yeah. That went from another brand into Canon, and then I've been with them ever since through the transition to from manual focus and film to digital, and then autofocus. Awesome. And the digital evolution, obviously, most recently into the mirrorless stuff. So it's been really exciting.
Yeah, I heard you talking just before about the R3. Is that the camera you're using at the moment?
Yeah, so I was a late adopter really for the mirrorless, but when the R3 came out, it kind of made sense. It filled a niche that was similar to my 1DX Mark II that I've been using. In the DSLR area, I was on 5D Mark IV and 1DX2. But the R3 came out, I gave it a go, and it's fantastic. Yeah.
We're just showcasing some of your beautiful images. Obviously, you've not only obviously quite well known as a nature photographer and wildlife photographer, but it seems like you're multifaceted with the landscape and some street scenes here and some portraiture. You're talking before about things that kind of make you a bit uncomfortable. Like the street photography for you is a bit of a challenge. So
yes, yeah.
It'll be something we touch on tonight with the awards. So,
yeah, for sure.
So it's always good to work a little bit on your weaknesses, as you were saying before, to make you a more well-rounded photographer. So it's refreshing to even hear from you that there's still things that give you a bit of the heebie-jeebies when it comes to photography.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think we all have those areas that we're comfortable in, and yeah, it's always nice to give it a go.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thank you, Darren. Thanks for sharing. Stephen, welcome to On the Couch. It's your first time.
No, second time.
Second time on the couch.
Second time.
There we go.
So I had my partner in crime, Jules Ingle, who we co-jointly managed the Canon Collective Facebook group.
Yep.
So been in this space before, which is good. So thanks for having us back.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. I definitely touch on you about your community alliances tonight, Stephen, because I think you've done some beautiful work. Obviously, for those who don't know, you're on Canon Collective, but you're also an admin of the Canon Collective Facebook group, which has about 20,000 Australian members.
Yes, yeah.
Which is pretty impressive. Something that you do in your spare time, as well as your podcasting career. You were telling me at episode 195.
Yeah, I've recorded episode 195 today in the Focus series, which has been kind of a passion thing to put one out every week to be consistent.
Yep.
And again, like I said, it's grown to quite a big audience. It's surprising, it has a big international audience as well, but a lot of Australians audience as well. But I think it all comes back from my love of helping the community, and more my photography these days is about kind of working with the community, working with the collective, working with people like Darren, and Darren just gives so much of his time and knowledge to the community, and we've just found that from most of the guys in Canon are just really, they're not afraid to share.
No,
which is fantastic. So.
We're talking about Damien.
Yeah, and look,
Damien who brings the community forward as well.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I think when people get to a comfortable level with their photography, they're happy to kind of share. They're not worried that you're going to steal their secrets.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah,
that's one thing I have noted too. Everyone I've interviewed on the couch has been quite willing to share a lot of their information. I guess that's what makes them in the partnership words of Canon masters, champions, and the like as well, because they're so willing to help the community going forward. Darren obviously gives a lot of his time to judging as well and critiquing images for people, which I think is a great experience. Your foray into photography, Stephen, if you want to give us a little bit of insight.
I was very lucky, I suppose. My dad was a photographer. He worked part-time as a photographer. So I grew up with a darkroom at home.
Yep.
So from the age of 7, I just was, I suppose, mesmerised by the whole process, how you could do, take this image and see it develop in front of your eyes. So, and he was very much into astrophotography. He'd built, at the time, it was the largest refracting telescope in the Southern Hemisphere. He actually hand ground the mirror.
Yeah.
So we had that in our backyard at G-Bung. And back in those days, the light pollution wasn't an issue. And he would hang
probably a lot more stars at that point.
Yeah. The sky would have been a lot cleaner too.
Yeah.
But he'd hang a Praktika, a 35mm Praktika off this, and he'd built the whole thing. He was a tool maker by trade.
Yes.
So he was very handy at manufacturing things.
Have his own shed out the back, did he?
Yeah, he had a pretty good workshop.
Yep.
And like I said, he had some help with the Queensland Uni at the time. They helped him with the mirror design and hand glowing mirror, because we'd have all these people turn up at home or gathered around the telescope, getting these pictures of the moon and stuff. So
we didn't have iPhones back then, obviously.
No.
So you got to find other ways to occupy your time, no doubt.
And that was the thing for me. I just saw that magic, and then I haven't really put a camera down since. And I do, even though I do shoot some freelance stuff, I don't do so much, but I do more in the education space and the community space these days. Just love to share that. I mean, there's nothing better than when you see a photographer coming up and you can teach them something, and then they get it. Yeah, that's a great feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of your photography style, what genres really drives you and your photography?
Yeah, I do a lot of street, and I do a lot of travel photography. I love those two things kind of go hand in hand. Although the travel things have been a bit harder.
Yes.
I was lucky enough. I was in Italy end of 2019 when the pandemic hit. So that kind of slowed me down. So I haven't been out of the country since 2019. So I'm itching to get back out there with the camera and explore.
Brilliant.
But I mean, there's plenty of stuff. We're fortunate in Brisbane. There's plenty of stuff to photograph, and some of the stuff I did this year was with Brisbane Street Art Festival.
Awesome.
And, for 2 weeks I followed a heap of the artists around. It was great to be able to kind of work with those guys and capture. And an interesting thing about creatives, it doesn't matter what medium you kind of create. We all cut from the same cloth.
There's a bit of respect there from each genre. It doesn't really matter whether you're a painter or you're
sculpture or what it is.
It's cool collaborative community, which I really like as well. Absolutely. Awesome. And now what are you shooting yourself?
I shoot now. I mean, a bit like Darren. I mean, when I got my first 35mm, it was Canon, and it's one of those things that you start accumulating lenses, so you get into the ecosystem. And I was kind of a late adopter to digital. My first digital, I think I was just trying. I bought the 450D, and then I jumped straight to the 5 series camera, the full frame. So I've kind of done all the full frame Canon 5 series cameras. So currently shoot with an R5. So I've jumped into the mirrorless. Absolutely love it.
Brilliant.
So I've got an R5 and an R6.
Yes.
Wow. But just
got the best of both worlds.
So
spoiled there.
Yeah, and look, I'm building up the RF glass. So the adaptive glass works really good, but I do love the RF stuff. So
Awesome. No, that's great, and really fascinating to hear you talk, and because you very much give a lot of your time to the community. I've noted, obviously, being an admin for a Facebook group that has 20,000 Australian members probably keeps you pretty busy.
It does. Look, and we run a really tight ship, and everyone who actually is part of that group, I think, appreciates the fact that we try and make it as safe and a respectable place. So when we've got a lot of people in there, all different journeys, point in the journey of photography. So it is, if you get someone starting out and they start getting some bullied within a group, they'll pretty much drop out. So we want to kind of grow those people.
It was good hearing Darren talk about it earlier today, and we were speaking about how it's such a positive space, and everyone there is more about the uplifting side of things when it comes to people posting their work, because most people probably are a bit hesitant at the start to start sharing a lot of their work. But I think what's good about the community and what I've been able to witness myself is that everyone's quite uplifting and positive about the photos that are being posted on the group, which I think is a testament to the admins and the job that you guys do.
Yeah, and like I said, look, and that's the space we wanted it to be. And look, Canon got such a good reputation as a company. So we want to do justice to that reputation as well. So if you're in a space and it's got Canon's name on it, you want it to actually be, the best of the best where we can. And look, last night we do a spotlight thing where we spotlight one of the members. And we just celebrated 100 spotlights since we've been doing it. Great achievement. And like I said, and everyone shares their stories. And when people read those stories, sometimes they can relate to it. Some people have overcome a lot of diversity to get into photography. And they've been able to actually, some of them forged a photography career out of it. So it's great to hear those stories as well.
I think that's how people sort of come together through shared experiences. So I think that's really positive as well.
And I think that the timing might have been good when that transitioned into a Facebook group, was because we had the pandemic. So the face-to-face stuff was really difficult to do. So people were looking for that space. So I think timing, like sometimes timing's everything with some things. So, so it was just great that we could actually keep photographers engaged and keep them growing.
That's beautiful. And tonight too, I forgot to mention, if anyone does have any questions for Darren or Stephen, tonight's a really good opportunity, especially if you want to talk about the awards or just in their own photography careers. And if there was any questions that we have tonight, we'd love to see it and love to hear it. And Stephen has watched a few of the On the Couches, so I'm a little bit nervous in the presence of someone that's got to experience so much so far, which is great. But yeah, and how did you come about with your engagement with Canon Collective, and then now working alongside someone like a Darren Duke?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's I think my first experience was Collective was actually the second event they ever ran. And I just heard about it somewhere, and I went along and just instantly clicked with the guys.
Yep.
And it was just such a great group of photographers. And then I tried to get to as many of the Collective events, and I've had some amazing experiences. Hot air ballooning, you know, in Byron Bay, which absolutely, if anyone gets the chance, get in a hot air balloon with your camera. It's the best camera platform in the world.
You did that photo festival at Byron, didn't you?
Yeah, did that. Yeah,
so that was one of the early events. Wasn't
one of the early events, but they've had some trivia. I've been up on the Story Bridge with a 5D Mark IV, and not many people get to go up on the Story Bridge in Brisbane and shoot with a 5D4
For sure.
because cameras aren't really allowed up there.
Yeah, for sure.
But there were experiences that Canon could basically bring to photographers, and like I said, so. And when
you must pinch yourself a little bit when you're working alongside a Darren Jew, Damien Bredberg, masters of Canon, essentially.
Exactly. And look, it was funny because I started something which has now been running for 7 years in the Collective. They always had a Facebook group, and there was very little engagement. So every Saturday I asked a question, and it became a thing. It's been going for 7 years. It's 7 years now.
Everybody looks forward to Saturday morning questions.
We try and get people thinking. So we try and get people to think. Sometimes, you know, we'll ask them to share stuff, but sometimes we just get people thinking about something.
Yep.
And sometimes we get some quite good, and Darren's a great participator because Darren will jump in and leave some comments, and it's most welcome. Like people can't believe that they actually got someone like the Canon Master commenting and giving them advice.
For sure.
You know, so
for sure, which we're going to touch on a bit soon as well, which is really great. Darren, it must be nice to work alongside someone as well that you know lives and breathes photography, but not only that, lives and breathes to bring a community together through photography. So that must be a cool experience.
For sure. Stephen's passion for just making that happen, because it's so easy for something like that community just to have a slow decline over time, and to have its own agendas going off and maybe not being so good for everybody. And it's a really good space for people to learn, and he's got so much energy and loves to get things happening, and it's working out pretty well working with him.
I think you were saying before that Stephen's just going to be across anything photography related in Brisbane. So
if you need to know anything, you just ask Stephen. He usually knows what's going on.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Which I'll give a plug to something we're doing next year, which is the Brisbane Photography Festival. So that's going to be happening in June next year. So that's going to be something hopefully we can bring the community together and give them a really great experience. Because I mean, as you know, people buy cameras sometimes and they want to go out and shoot.
Yes.
So sometimes you have to give people a reason to get out there and use their cameras and experience it.
100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's easy to buy a camera, but to have that motivation to go, it's kind of like the gym at some point. It's like if you have a few people or friends going to gym, that's going to give you more reason to get out of bed at 6 a.m., 5 a.m. and go there. So I'm sure it's the same with photography to some degree, which is really cool. Yeah, cool. And now let's touch into another really important facet of both of your work and also why you're presenting a bit this evening. We're going to talk about the second annual Clique Awards. So the Clique Awards is a bit of a labour of love for both of you. And I'm just going to pop that on my screen here. So we've got a copy there so everyone can see. Perfect. So it's open today.
Yes, open
today, which is good.
Entry windows open.
Great. Now, for those at home that are wondering, they might not know, some of them might know. Can you give us a brief description on the Clique Awards and how that has come about in the second edition?
Okay. I'll start at the beginning because I had this idea for the community to have a professional photographic awards they could enter and get some real feedback. And I said to Darren, I've got this idea. And I knew Darren had some good experience in that space.
Yes.
So we worked the idea and then we came up with the Clique Awards. and it was super successful last year.
Yeah, for
absolute fantastic feedback. Pushed them out of their comfort zone a bit. And we know as photographers, if you don't push yourself out of your comfort zone, you won't keep growing as a photographer.
For sure.
So the thing I thought we could bring to it was some rigor to the adjudication process. So some transparency in there, and also importantly, a lot of competitions, you as an organizer, you please a few people, you win, and you make a lot of people unhappy because they didn't win.
For sure.
So what we felt was it's really important for everybody to get something back, and that's the best thing I can give people is some tips and pointers on what parts of their photography they can be improving in. So we've got this kind of reporting process involved in the competition.
Absolutely, which we'll talk about some entry questions and answers that we'll probably get a lot of, as you know. But there's going to be two groups, obviously, the same format as last year in some ways. We've got the novice and the experienced group. Do you want to just talk to us briefly about those two terminologies?
Yeah, look, I think we know that people quite often feel intimidated if you're going up against some quite seasoned photographers, putting your work up there. So we wanted to make a soft place where people could actually enter their work. If they've only just been shooting for under 2 years and they just kind of found photography and they want to get some feedback. And as far as the judging...
So the scoring, their work will be scored in exactly the same way. The people scoring the images don't know how long the entrant's been shooting. Their pictures all get scored against the same level. But when it comes to competing for the titles in the categories, then they're only competing against people who've been likewise only with the limited experience.
For sure.
So it gives that level playing field for those newbies to the photography to be able to come in and actually know that if they win, and look, and there were some standout shots that some of the people did it. They're on their path. They're on the right path. They're on their way.
Even if they don't win, obviously we'll touch on a little bit about the report cards soon. But I think which is a great initiative in giving people some really good feedback from some really good photographers. Darren, in regards to judging, obviously you're going to be on the judging panel. Judging is something you've had quite some good experiences with. Why do you find it's important to be part of this process and critiquing and making a report card and giving really solid feedback in photography?
I got involved with photography competitions through my membership with the AIPP and their annual awards process. And the first time I entered, the feedback I got from that just shot my photography up to the next level. And I've done okay at those awards over the years. But I do well. I've been doing it well each year because I take on board what the feedback was from the year before and go, I'm going to do better next year.
For sure.
And it just gives you that sort of incentive to keep going, getting better pictures.
And what would you say to people at home that are thinking of entering but a bit hesitant because they find maybe critiquing a bit nerve-wracking and having their images looked at quite intensely? But as you said, this is an important part of your growth in photography and your own journey. So it's obviously a pretty important thing.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the thing that I always look at is your best picture is going to be your next picture you take, not the last one. So you've entered the last picture you took. It's done, it's finished. It's once you put it out into the world, it's everybody else's. They get to see it and make their own comments on it. You kind of got to live with that and then just aim to do better next time.
But just touch on that point, Jackson, is it's blind judging. So the judges actually don't know who the photographer is. And the other thing too is the report card is something that is sent personally to the photographer. So it's not publicly seen. So people have that ability to share that information if they want to share it, or they can just stay completely in the shadows. So I think that's good. That gives people that comfort, like you said, so they're not kind of feel like they have to expose themselves.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
You know, as the competition evolves, and we run a couple of other competitions with the same platform now as well. As each competition evolves, we're kind of refining how we report as well, so that it is more useful to the participants. So we started out by actually giving the score, and a number kind of doesn't mean much.
Yes.
So we've now turned that into more like a report card at school, which says you're in this band. You know, you got work to do.
Yeah, sure.
You're doing solid performance, or you're exceeding.
Yeah.
And that's in each of the different kind of pillars of photography for each picture.
Yeah, which I think is really special, because it's normally, if you enter a competition, you're either a winner or you're probably a loser, and you don't really get much more than that. You might be highly commended, or you might be a winner, but most of the time you don't get much feedback in improving your own images and journey. So I think this is a pretty important step.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, looking at the kind of data that we can get back, because we're scoring everything. We're not just, you know, some competitions will have a first round where somebody sits and goes in, out, in, out. There's no measurement of how that happened.
For sure.
No feedback.
Sure.
Whereas we can, because we're putting numbers down, and we've got 3 people looking at each and every picture and then averaging that out. We can look at that data and go, hey, we've got a whole bunch of people that are doing really solid photography right in the middle of this bell curve. You know, there's the newbies and the people that aren't doing so well, but then there's this huge bunch of really good photographers who are doing exceptionally well. And then the ones that excel in the competition, in the competitive sense, are a small group that sort of the outliers that sit outside, and they've been able to, I guess, cover most aspects of what makes a good picture, but then excelled in one particular area probably.
It's a good point. And I think with photography as well, the lack of inspiration sometimes is a big factor, but you can also get to a level where you may feel like you've plateaued a bit. This could be a good incentive for people, even if they're feeling a bit meh about their own photography, just to get some advice, to maybe take the next step, and some really helpful information from 3 very astute photographers, no doubt.
Yeah, and that idea that I guess that's what I love about photography is that you never stop improving. And if anybody says they're, you know, at the top of their game, that's a shame, because it means they've lost the passion.
For sure.
You know, I hope to be taking better pictures until I physically can't take another picture.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't want to be living on pictures that were, you know, 20 years ago.
That's right. You can't keep showing someone a catalogue of what you were doing 20, 30 years ago. I think your next photo is strive to be your best one, essentially. I think what you've said previously about it, I know you and Stephen have talked about it before, but subject matter is really only important in the competitive component, not the review component. You want to explain a bit maybe why you've done in the past?
Yeah, so
also someone looking for a review and not just to compete, which is something that can get lost in any sort of competitive sort of environment.
I guess if you look at how the Clique Awards work, there's what we would call the first stage, which is the review stage, which is when 3 people look at each picture and say, give review on every single picture and 6 different areas in each picture. That's what gives us the scores. That's what gives us the short list of entries that go on towards the judging stage. And it's really that second round that becomes the competitive stage. And we've purposely taken that out as a completely separate scenario in how it's judged as well. The second round isn't scored. The judges don't know what the scores were for the pictures that are in the shortlist. They see that new judges see them with fresh eyes and deal with them in a competitive sense and say, well, this is the best picture. It's not a 10 in composition and a 6 in technique,
Yes.
it's the best picture. And but they're dealing with a really good bunch of pictures.
Yeah, awesome. And tell us, Darren, a bit about, I guess, the categories, because obviously that you guys have got some really good feedback recently and how you've run your first one as well, which I know I spoke to Darren a little bit about. We got some good data, so they know what people are looking for. And obviously there's 2 streams as well, so that's important for people to note. There's the process only stream and the edited stream. Stephen, did you want to talk a bit about those 2 streams?
Look, we know in the community there is people who strive to get it right in camera. And one thing I would say to advice to any photographer is that should be your goal, to try and get it as close to the mark in camera as you can.
Yep.
Because when you shoot, when I shoot an event, sometimes I'm shooting hundreds of pictures. You don't have time to sit there and do mass edits. You have a deadline to get them out. So we know people are trying to strive to do that.
Yep.
And we know there's people who like to go in and they like to do some post manipulation.
Yep.
And both are perfectly fine, aren't they, Darren? I mean, they're both legitimate.
Still a photograph.
Still a photograph, and it's like you might like a lot of salt in your cooking. I mightn't like salt. So it's kind of like we're both right.
Yeah.
Same as if the pictures. So it doesn't matter if you do some post production, that's fine.
Yep.
Or if you strive to do absolute minimal.
Yeah, so the important thing for us is to separate those 2 things, so that somebody who is a photographer who wants to capture a moment in the camera and do minimal processing, and we're not saying that it's straight out of camera, because I don't think anything. I think everything can do with something.
Yeah, sure.
As long as, I guess, what we're trying to do is make sure that entries in the process only stream represent the moment that was captured by the camera. And the edited stream is everything else. So if you want to add a sky or take out a telegraph pole, you end up in the edited stream, and you're competing against other people who are editing. Yeah. But if you're in the process only stream, you're only dealing with moments captured.
Awesome.
And I guess that's something, like, for both of us, it's pretty important that photography stays the captured moment, because that's what it that's where its strength lies in, especially when we start to see all this AI stuff starting, which look like photos. They're not photos, they're images. So in a way, that's kind of reminding us that what photography isn't, what photography can be, that celebration of a moment in time. So,
and I think for photographers too, basically what happens is, quite often, like myself, I sit in both camps. So some pictures I know that I will go and do post on it, and other stuff I will know that I'm going to do absolutely minimal stuff to it. And like, again, them both are legitimate. And doing like event photography, sometimes the composition, you can't get it right. This is something that's there that you don't want to be there, that you're going to have to do something, deal with it in post. But again, I think we just want to make people have that space to do both.
And the process only isn't, we're not saying that it has to be, like we say, straight out of camera and a bit of adjustment in lightness or darkness. You can still burn and dodge, you can still desaturate, you can still make changes, global changes. You just can't change the content of the moment.
No, that's a good point. And talking about the categories that you've added some new ones in, or you've added a new one in this year, which is really exciting, which is the action category, which is something that you've probably got requested a fair bit, I should.
Yeah, look, I mean, we have a lot of photographers who shoot, sports and that type of stuff. So pretty much, they were trying to find it hard, whereas we had people enter in the people category, some sporting, some great sporting images. But we felt like people just felt like they're competing with a lot of other stuff. So we thought, tweaking it.
And we looked at where the majority of entries in last year's competition came, and there was one standout that was the lowest number of entries, which was the portraits that were edited. So that was the least amount of entries. So we took that out, and we replaced it with a processed only stream of action. And so it's put a little bit of a bias towards the processed only versus the edited, but it's a reflection of what people want in terms of, because it was about 30% of entries last year were in the edited streams, and over 2/3 in the processed only. So,
yeah, cool. That's really good insight. And obviously, you've still got people as a category, so there is some element to a human component in images as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got in the processed only stream, we have people, places. So that's the landscape stuff. Nature and wildlife, and action. They're the four for.
So if you're a street photographer and there's people in the scene, and that's I suppose the majority of what is seen there, you can enter that into that area. If the street photography was like architectural buildings, that can be places. So you can. It's just why you think about how you fit those into the categories.
And Darren had a good point as well in one of the interviews of a show jumper. Could be classed as like an action moment. Could be a people moment as well. Could be a really nice portrait of someone riding a horse. So there's like a couple of ways you could interpret your image, and either way it's going to get reviewed. But how would you advise people on possibly the best category to enter? Because there might be some confusion, let's say in that scenario. What would, Stephen, your advice be for?
I think if you were taking, say, a very tight shot of the show jumping, and so you've got a fair amount of the person on the horse in the frame, and you can clearly still see that what they're doing, that's probably going to lend itself more to people.
Yeah, I guess if there's a whole bunch of emotion in the person and it says something about the person rather than the event, the horse, the activity, I'd probably put in people. But if it was a bit further back and had the horse jumping, I'd probably put it in action.
Perfect. No, that's a good way to sum it up.
And with the street stuff, if the main subjects are people, one looking this way, one looking that way, one with the sun behind them, then it's probably a people shot. But if it's more of an environment, then you could probably consider putting in places. And remembering that your review it's irrelevant what category you're in. All the reviewing is category agnostic. You only get placed into your category that you only get grouped with your category at the second stage in the judging round.
Awesome. Might talk a bit about entry and how that process and part of it works. Obviously, anyone that is on the Canon Collective Facebook group is the starting point. That's
the starting point. So basically people would be, if they're not in the collective, they should go and join the collective.
Step one, join
the collective.
Canon Collective group.
One thing I'll say, make sure you just answer all the questions. There's 3 questions. One, do you live in Australia? That's a simple one. Next one is, what do you shoot with? And we're not trying to, we don't care what you shoot with. People will sometimes say, yeah, I've got this, this, and this. That's fine. But the most important one is the last one. That's to agree to the terms and conditions of the site. So, and then you're in, and then basically head off to the featured tab. And in the featured tab, there's an event which is for the Clique. And everything's there.
Perfect.
So I think it's just important to reinforce that there's a bunch of people on the Canon Collective Facebook group that aren't Canon shooters.
I was going to mention that.
And that's perfectly fine. And they'll eventually come around, I'm sure. But
have to.
They're welcome. But then once they get to the site, you can ask a question. We'll point you in the right direction. We've got an event page within the group, which is the Clique Awards event, and that's where you can go and see a bunch of information and some discussion about what's happening, and you can ask questions.
Perfect. Some other pretty important T's and C's as well. 18 plus is still obviously the requirement to submit photos. $25 per photo. Maximum of 6, if I'm correct.
That's right.
Perfect. Any other important notes for T's and C's that people need to consider before joining?
I think the most important thing about the T's and C's is that you read them. because there's
Good call.
that's where, and that goes for any competition.
Mm-hmm.
It's no use entering a picture that's not going to match the terms and conditions. So it's a really good place to make sure you get the right information about image size and specifications, that kind of stuff. We do have some quite stringent stuff in the nature category because it's obviously very important that photographers and photographs aren't more important than nature.
Sure.
And so we need to be only dealing with pictures that are respectful of the subject. And that's probably the most important terms and conditions.
Well, there was talk about, I think you mentioned it after the recap of the first edition of the Clique Awards, there's possibility for a junior competition, might be something coming up in another iteration at some point.
Down the track, quite possibly. We'll get this adult competition evolved, and I'm not sure what the rules are for joining the group.
It'll be the Facebook. It'll be based on the Facebook rules because it's a Facebook group. As far as that, but
a lot of that comes down to the the legalities of giving prizes and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So
But I think Darren touched on, and it's one of the most. It doesn't matter what competition you're entering. One of the most, and I've run many competitions and photo marathons, and there's a lot of rules you need to follow, and we have people who just blindly start sending stuff in that clearly don't fall outside the rules.
Sure.
And then are disappointed when we have to reject them.
Right.
So reading the rules is that's the place to start. Get your head around, and then ask questions. Like if you're not sure about something, people do get the sizing. We ask for
3600 pixels on the long side this year.
So, and again, why we're doing that is you want to give those images the best possible viewing for the reviewers.
If
you submit something, it's 160 on one side, it's not going to really display very well.
Sure. So that's been one of the really good things about the competition. It's given people who don't know how to resize their pictures a reason to ask the question
and
learn about it. That kind of thing. I think that's really important. And we talked briefly about the sorry,
it'll come to you down.
It'll come back. Asking questions in the group is really a great place. So the category, you might say, which category should I put this picture in? Ask in the group, and the group will answer your question for you. It doesn't have to be me or Stephen that answers that question. So I will help. So
Cool. I'm just displaying some images at the moment from last year's competition and the finalists as well, which I think is important to share. Try again. 1 second. Let's try again. Perfect. Let's try that. Sorry, guys. Cool. So we're just showing some photos from last year's competition. And Darren, you said it was a good point to reflect and look at the images as exemplars, but noting that these photos are going to be possibly very different to the batch that will come in, and it's important to find your own avenue and your own niche, I guess, when it comes to a lot of these competitions. But these are good reference points.
Yeah, they're a good starting point. They're the winning pictures from the first awards.
Yes.
We purposely, for the first couple of years, we're not limiting how old pictures can be, so that people can get used to this and pull out their best picture that they think they want to enter.
Yes.
As time goes on, we would like to sort of, I guess, evolve into a contemporary photography competition.
Sure.
So, pictures that have to have been shot in the last couple of years.
Yes.
Once that starts to happen, what you'll start to see is this year's winners become next year's runners-up. And
so I think that's a really good quote. Yeah.
Because there's always this evolution of improvement, and the way to get better is to be original and to do better at technique and all those things. So each year things are going to get better.
Yeah.
You look back at there's from the APAs, the Australian Professional Photography Awards, they used to do a book every year of the winners, and you look back at the stuff from the 80s that was winning, and you go, how did that win? But you're looking at it with 2020 eyes, and with cameras that can do everything for you. And, you know, when you think about what had to be done to make those pictures, you know, that just, I guess, illustrates the point about the evolution of the quality of imagery.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think we look at some of Darren's images from your early work, some of the amazing wildlife pictures, and how much skill had to go into capturing those images.
Yeah.
Today we're a little bit spoiled. Like my R5, it's like the eye tracking is, and then you got the R3. They're both amazing. But again, so we're starting to see. I think that's helping people lift their level. And I always say to people, there's a bit of an argument about, is it cheating? But it allows you to actually be able to concentrate more on your composition and other parts of the image. It takes away one of those elements that you don't have to worry about missing focus.
I'd agree.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it gives actually almost everyone a similar playing field in some ways, because then it doesn't become the technical skill as much in operating your gear. It becomes the vision that you have in mind and the photo end result. Because editing has now become such probably a more important component of the process instead of how the camera was operated. So it's interesting that you guys have seen a little bit too, that the editing sort of side can take over a little bit. And that's good that you've got the two streams there to kind of keep the boundaries of fairness on those that might not be as proficient as editing as some others as well, which is really cool.
Well, I don't think people want to go up against someone who's got fantastic, I suppose, skills within post manipulation software. That people sometimes feel that that's hard to compete with. So people can choose, like I said, how they compete. And I think the thing is, I think what's probably coming around is that more and more photographers are now striving to get as much in camera as they can and minimize it. Because, like I said, as when you're out there working, the last thing you're going to be doing is after you've been on your feet for 10 hours, because quite often you've got a deadline to deliver a certain amount of images,
for sure,
that you want to do as little as possible to those images, so you can get them uploaded to wherever they're going. So
and as manipulation and editing software has become more sophisticated, it has really created a bigger divide, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It was at that period where there was a lot of crossover, and people were a bit not clear about whether they were editing or not, and that kind of thing. And that period, I think, has passed, and we've got the people that are just going, hey, this is a real photo that was taken. It's a real moment that was captured, and this isn't. This was something I made in my head. And
fantastic.
the AI programs now are actually that. I made that in my head, and I typed it, and here it is. So that's really an extension, not of photography, but of that kind of creative process.
Yeah, cool. I'm just going to showcase a bit more of your work, Darren, because I'm not sure if I did it before, so I'm just going to pop that on the screen there. Tell us about the judging areas and the categories for judging, because I do have the criteria here as well, but can you tell us a bit about the other judges, or is that a bit of a secret?
Oh, we'll let you know as time goes on. We'll keep a little bit under our hats for now.
I hope I haven't given too much away.
No, it's okay. But we will be. You can be confident that your entrants could be confident that their pictures are being scored by really experienced reviewers who love looking at pictures and love giving feedback. And then at the competitive stage, they'll be being judged by people who know what they're looking at and have a great visual kind of database that they draw on when they're choosing pictures.
And they may or may not have 40 years of experience in photography.
Yeah, a bit of that going on. And again, there's always more than one person. A lot of competitions, they have a judge, and it becomes kind of up to their likes and dislikes. Whereas we always create a panel, so there's feedback, and in the judging component especially, there's the second stage. There's a chance for them to discuss the pictures as well, and maybe somebody sees something in a picture that somebody else didn't see. So.
Yep. And obviously don't want to step on anyone's toes, but with photo competitions, like local camera clubs, they're a really good initiative to get the community involvement. But this is kind of a different way to judge images and give a really nice rounded aspect to how the judging criteria is met. So just going through some criteria: impact, technique, composition, subject, storytelling, and innovation. Do you want to just briefly give me some insight to impact as a category?
Okay, so impact, we kind of give that first pillar, impact and mood. Yep. So impact is that initial feeling that you get when you look at the picture.
Right.
And we want to get a number out of the scorers pretty quick for that.
Yep.
Mood tends to be when a picture grows on you. So they come under the one pillar.
Yes.
And can I just say that you can be doing really well in one pillar and really bad in another. Each picture is kind of those criteria. Silo your picture into 6 parts.
Yeah.
So we don't want people kind of looking at a picture and going, well, that composition is terrible, so I'm going to throw it out completely. Because that composition might be terrible, but the technique might be really excellent.
Yeah.
So that photographer needs to be rewarded and know that they're doing well with their technique, but they just need to work on their composition. So impact and mood is the first one. Quick score.
Yep. And technique obviously is how the photograph or the element of photography is being utilized.
Yeah, so how the physical tools that you have at your disposal, both in the camera and in processing or editing software, have been used, and have they been used in a way that adds to the storytelling of the picture. So, the classic and easy one to describe is a blurry photo, out of focus picture, or an intentionally blurry image.
Sure.
And it's up to the person reviewing the picture to make that call as to whether they think that the blur has been successfully applied or not.
Yeah.
So,
when people are submitting their photography, is there a brief bio they put in, or is they just submitting the image by themselves?
Image and a 25-word description, which we want just to be a description, not a sales job.
Yes.
Yeah, we get a few sales jobs.
Sure.
They don't help.
Any bribes?
Haven't had any offers in those, but definitely those descriptions, you won't do yourself any favors by overselling your own picture, because you're not judging it. We're judging it.
And a picture should tell most of the story
itself.
It's got to do the heavy lifting.
Heavy lifting, but you can refine the exact details of the subject, because not everybody knows everything about everything.
Yep.
And you can help people, but we don't need to know that that you felt really good when you took the picture.
Sure.
Because we know that you probably did. We all feel good when we take pictures.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. And obviously then we've got composition, which kind of speaks for itself in some ways. And we talked about drone photography because we weren't sure. I wasn't sure and how that was judged, but it's still judged in the same criteria. So you could argue that, although it's ultimately easier to achieve maybe a fantastic image, but it's still got to adhere to a lot of these guidelines, which is really good. So you've still got the same criteria that's got to meet. Yes,
every picture has to perform in those areas. And the first 4, I guess, the technique,
impact,
technique, composition,
and
subject. Most pictures are going to be able to perform pretty well in those these days. The harder ones are the storytelling and the innovation. But that just tells you that if you want to compete well, not just have a good solid picture, if you want to compete and beat other pictures, you're going to have to do well in do well in everything, and exceptionally in something.
Yeah.
So,
and we got storytelling as well. Obviously, the part of the image that's telling more of the story than the 25 words, obviously, as well. And then innovation. Do you want to tell us a bit about innovation as a subject? Because I think that's quite an interesting criteria.
Yeah, well, that's the hardest one to achieve, and our statistics. When we looked at all the scoring, obviously the two hardest things to achieve might surprise you. The hardest thing for people to get is innovation, and so that's about not just replicating pictures that you see, but coming up with pictures that you have come up with ideas, techniques, whatever yourself. That is hard. The second most lowest scoring area was technique. So I think what we got from the scoring from last year was that people know what they want to shoot. They know how to pick the camera up and point it at something. And tell a good story with it. But they're not really great at refining their technique, being really, really critical of their work, and innovating with it. So
that's a really good point.
They're two areas that a big majority of entrants can really work on.
And I guess what's good about that is the report card and gives some insight to that side of photography. So that could be something that Stephen's mentioned it a little bit earlier, that you might feel like in the previous competition, maybe that's a bit of your weakness, but then you go and submit your photo and get some really good reports on one area of that criteria that maybe you haven't been so good at. And it's almost like that really great feeling that, you know where you're going. It's starting to click.
You've got that, I suppose, that direction to follow up on. So I think that's what gives people,
especially if you've entered 6 pictures and they're all telling you a similar thing, then you should go and do a masterclass in composition, not worry about going and learning about apertures and shutter speeds.
It's really good.
That's the kind of thing we'd like to get out of it in the long run for people. And also, it's important to note that the scoring process, each picture is scored against a kind of theoretical perfect picture, not against the best picture in the competition. Some competitions, move the scoring around based on, the best picture in the competition getting 100.
Yeah, right.
That's not how we work. We go, the best picture in the world would get, somebody entered the best picture in the world, it would come in at top scoring.
Yeah, sure.
So that means that next year, the scoring will still be more relative to a theoretical best picture rather than the bunch of pictures that were entered this year. The judging stage, the second stage, that's where they're all obviously judged against each other. That's where you start to see, that's where the best picture in the competition comes from.
Cool. What I think is really cool, because obviously we're in the second edition now, people can see that growth within their set of images this year that they might have got different feedback on last year. So I think it's pretty cool that this is a continuing competition. So you can see how you've grown as a photographer, and maybe you've dabbled in different things. You might have submitted a lot of people photos in the previous year. This year you might have focused on more places or landscapes, which is pretty cool.
Sure. And I'd probably just suggest, Jackson, if people are in the area and they want to come down to CameraPro, you guys, there's another element, which was the book that was printed.
Yes.
So a lot of people, for the first time, having their images printed. And so,
which is this book right here,
which lives here, so people can pop in and.
I'll give that to you just to showcase for us.
Yeah, so Darren, this is Darren's handiwork.
So through the
Darren, sorry, Darren.
Yeah, no worries. No,
I'm good at delegating.
So the scoring process does a few things for us. It creates our report cards. It creates our short lists that go to the judges for final deliberation. But it also gives us a chance to go down a list of tops of the total scores and draw out a top 100. pictures.
as we're showcasing here.
Yeah.
And why 111, you might ask? Yeah. You
Took the
did
words
ask.
right out of my mouth.
Yeah. That was because when we went down the list, we got down to 100, the 100th picture, and it had a score, and there was 11
Other
more
pictures
with that same
Same
score.
score.
So it had to be the top
That makes
111.
sense.
So
That makes complete sense.
and so we put that book together, and it showcases the best 111 pictures from what the reviewers said were the best 111 pictures in the competition, and there are some amazing pictures in there. And I did the layout and chose the pairings and all that kind of stuff, and I had seen those pictures lots of times. From when they were entered to when they were scored to when they were judged, when they were posted on Facebook, all of the things. When I put them in this book, I just loved working with them. And when I saw it and flicked through it like that, I went, wow, this is an amazing bunch of people producing amazing pictures. Yeah.
And you're someone has seen a lot of photos, obviously, in your lifetime.
Exactly.
And it must be pretty cool that you still got that element of passion every time you see some more photography work, which I think is really cool.
Sure thing. Yeah.
And important for a judge to have as well, that keen eye, but also passion for imagery, which is really nice.
Yeah. And I think the nice thing about this too was seeing them as printed photographs, which we see so many pictures digitally now, and they become like just a commodity.
Yes.
But once they get printed like this, I think that's when they really have that respect and honor that they deserve.
Absolutely. Good point. Stephen, just quickly touching on some further things in the competition. Entries close on the 6th of December, is that
6th of December, that's right, yes. So
perfect.
All those details are on the group.
The good thing about the way the system works is that when you could enter today, you have to choose at the entry point, you have to choose how many pictures you're going to enter. So let's say you're going to enter 6. Choose 6, pay for them, upload 6 pictures. If in a week's time you take a better picture, or you go, you know what, I shouldn't enter that one, I should enter another one, you can swap it out.
All the way up to
closing.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. So you can't. It's difficult for us to add pictures. If you ordered, if you entered 4 and you go, oh, I've got another one, I'd add a 5th. But we can do it if people. You'll have to contact us through the support line to do it. But it's very simple to put some placeholders in there. Get yourself started, and away you go.
Awesome. And you've got a special on the couch offer.
Yes, please tell us about that.
There's an on the couch code coupon code you can use at the checkout, which will give you 1 free entry. So if you enter 6 pictures, you'll only pay for 5.
6 for the price of 5.
6 for the price of 5.
I like the sound of that. What's the code, Darren? Have you got
on the couch?
On the couch.
On the couch.
All in lowercase and all together.
On the couch, lowercase.
No spaces.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So January, the shortlist and finalist galleries are released. In February, the winners are announced. And then March, you obviously have that Clique Awards Top 100 book. Could be 112 maybe.
Could be.
We never know.
We don't know.
We'll keep them on the toast.
Yeah.
Just quickly, in summary, Stephen, what are your tips for submission? Because Darren told me you had some tips and tricks about maybe putting your images on the fridge.
I use the subtraction method where you basically just go and print them out as like 4x6s and scatter them on the fridge. You put them in places where I just walk past them every day and then just remove stuff to get your short list. I think the very first time I entered something where I had this bunch of images and I was trying to work out which ones do I enter, and that's how I kind of got to my short list, was just putting a lot of work up there and then just pulling stuff down. If it doesn't, I mean, that's what I can offer, I suppose, as a tip.
And the most important thing is that you enter things that you feel passionately about. Don't try and second guess what the judges might think, because that's not going to get you anywhere with your development as a photographer. You really want to be making the only way you can make better work is for you to make better work. And so it's got to please yourself first. That's my, I guess, mantra.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. I'm just showcasing a few of Stephen's photos up on here, which is great, because it's good to know that someone that runs a photography group is super involved, obviously, in the photography game with the R5 and the R6.
Yeah,
not to.
It's hard not to, and like I said, and you just can't help loving some of that fast glass, the RF glass. I got the 51.2. It's just a beautiful lens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Incredible. And final notes, gentlemen. Is there anything you want to reach out and just say for those that are a bit hesitant and on the fence? Any final words from either of you?
I think ask some questions in the group, and ask people who entered last year who were kind of on the fence, and they entered, and when they got their feedback, they just were so pleased they did. So sometimes we all have that doubt.
Yes.
Sometimes we just need a little bit of reassurance, and definitely the collective will give you that support and reassurance.
Yeah, the support from the group is amazing. I know when we put the top 100 album up in the group, which I think we'll put a link to in the event, the event page. The feedback everybody was giving each other for their work was really amazing.
Be a lot of FOMO for those that didn't submit any work.
Yes, well, exactly.
Just get a second chance.
And there's a lot of people actually said that. Oh, geez, I wish they had ended now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, and the winners can win some great vouchers courtesy of CameraPro.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Going to mention the awards and what do they win?
The winners in each category. So 6 categories. 6 categories. So 6 winners in experienced class and 6 winners in the novice class all get a $500 voucher.
Yep.
We call them 500 collective dollars.
To redeem.
They can spend that $500 on Canon gear here at CameraPro.
Awesome.
So
and you guys have got a wealth of knowledge to hook people up with the right gear. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mainly technical. I don't know how I would go in the storytelling, composition, and all the other criteria, innovation.
Well, you can get them with the cameras, get them out there shooting, get them to upgrade.
100%. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. Darren, firstly to you as well. Explorers Grant, we won't touch too much on it, but that is going till the 30th of November. So anyone that hasn't submitted for that now is also a good opportunity to give it one last crack.
Yeah, for sure. That is such a great program for funding really important projects, and some of the things that I've seen come out of that is you guys should be really proud of what you do there, and I'm really proud to be associated with it in helping assess the applications. Yeah. So if you haven't looked at it, get into it and read it up, and in your project could be beneficiary of some dollars from CameraPro.
It's great. It's certainly there and it's available. And if you've got something that you feel is worthy, now's the time to give it a crack.
Yeah.
And Stephen, obviously, back to the admin of the Facebook group, getting people to join. Just keep a note of that too. Obviously, the best way to get in this competition, or just to get involved in the community in general.
Just involved in the community, and look, there's a wealth of knowledge in there, and we've got photographers from all experience levels, like you said, to Canon masters, to people who've just picked a camera up for the first time. Yep. So you've got this enormous, brain's trust of knowledge there. So I'd just suggest to people, if they've come into CameraPro and they've bought themselves a camera, and they're struggling with kind of getting it right, jump in the collective and ask questions. And like you said, Darren said, there'll be heaps of people who will jump in with suggestions, how to set your camera up and that type of stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, both of you. It's been a pleasure. And anyone at home that is still a bit unsure and wants to ask any questions to the CameraPro team, follow us on Instagram and Facebook, Canon Collective on Facebook, which we'll post the link of as well. But yeah, it's been a spectacular night. If anyone's still a bit unsure, wants to ask anything to Darren or Stephen, I'm sure they'll cover that in due time as well. But yeah, keep an eye at it. We've got 6th of December, the entries closed, so keep a real eye on things and make sure you get some submissions in. But apart from that, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. and have an excellent evening. Thanks for joining.